Hi, I'm Stuart from the Norfolk Honey Company and welcome back to our allotment apiary where we're carrying out the on-the-spot queen rearing technique, and this is the second part of that video. And if you've not yet seen the first one, I'll pop a link down in the description below, or simply search through some of our videos and I'm sure that you'll find it in one of the playlists. I've had a couple of comments about it already, and thank you very much for all of the comments that you guys have been making. One person commented that I perhaps should have mentioned the original book. I guess it was the original book that this method comes from. Certainly at no point, I don't think anything that I do is unique, and I certainly wouldn't claim it as my own technique. So the on-the-spot queen rearing method has been well documented and tried by many beekeepers. And if you search through the internet, you'll find the original books and information relating to it. However, this is one of the first times we've tried it, and we've now come back a week after the original manipulation to try to check for queen cells and to split the double brood box down into individual nuke boxes. And of course, whether you're using a single brood box or a double brood box, it doesn't really matter. We just happen to have a national beehive that was on a double brood, and we're looking to expand the number of colonies that we've got, and it was an ideal opportunity for us to, rather than splitting down into 4, as I think the original suggestion, the original method instructs or suggests, we're hoping that we've got sufficient queen cells that we can split it down into 6. And I think I pointed out with this particular hive originally, when we first started doing the inspection, we noticed that the hive open mesh floor had fallen down at the back, and so the bees were going into the hive at the front and the back of the hive. And we're going to use that to our advantage, because we are going to use the BS Honey 2-in-1 nucleus boxes to split this colony down. And these 2-in-1 nuke boxes have got a slot in the middle that allows a 6-frame nuke to be converted into 2 3-frame nukes. A bit of a tongue twister. However, that means that they've got an entrance at the front and the back. So if we split them down, when we put these boxes in place of the original hive, I'm getting swamped by little flies around here at the moment. So if we put these down in front of the original hive, where the original hive sat, we're going to have bees going to the front and the back, which is great because it means that they'll divide themselves more evenly between the 6 individual mating nukes. Now, that's purely by accident, it wasn't planned, but sometimes these things work out positively for us. So the first step is to go through the colony and just check for queen cells. Hopefully we've got 6 frames that have queen cells on them. We're going to take those queen cells on the frame and put those into each of the individual mini nukes, the 3-frame nukes that we're going to use as the completion nukes. The queens will then emerge from those, hopefully go off and mate successfully, come back, and then we'll have 6 new queens in their own little nucleus colonies that we can then split down into full-size hives and build them up through the summer. So once we've placed the queen cell into the individual nuke section, we'll then add an additional frame, hopefully of brood, and then we'll add a frame of food to those as well, so that we get a nice even split of brood, food, and hopefully bees. The bees will be a little bit more difficult to control because we won't be staying here all afternoon to monitor it. But if you're doing this at home, you could actually watch to see where the bees start to drift to, and then swap around some of the boxes to try and even them out. But we're going to set them in place. We'll get what we get, but certainly in each of the mini nukes, we'll have sufficient bees to take care of that queen cell, and it might just mean that some of the nucleus colonies will be bigger than the others and will maybe get away quicker when we transfer them into a full-size hive. So I'm going to grab the smoker, get my hood up on my bee suit and we'll do a quick inspection through and see what we've got, and then hopefully we can show you those queen cells going into the BS Honey 2-in-1 nucs, and we'll hopefully have 6 individual queen cells in each of those separate compartments. So we've got our 3 BS Honey 2-in-1 nucs here. You can see they've got a division board down the middle and they have an entrance, and we've painted the entrances, this panel a different colour, and we've got a different, they're supplied with a different coloured disc entrance, which is really good. And we're going to pop these down in a line. If you recall, the rear entrance is this side because the floor had fallen down, so we've got bees now coming back to this side, and then the front entrance would be this side. So now we're going to break down the colony, go through, search for queen cells and place a queen cell hopefully in each of these boxes. If we've only got maybe 3 queen cells, then we'll just put 1 in each, and then we'll take the divider out and build them up into 3 nucs. If we've got 4 or 5, then we can again use as many of these dividers as we need, but remove it if we don't need it, because it will slot into a clever little side section here. But I'm hoping that we'll have sufficient queen cells that we'll be able to use all of these up. So let's have a look in the main hive bodies and see what we've got. So I anticipate that a lot of this will now be food stores. And of course, if we'd been clever about it last time, we could have marked the top of the frames to show which ones actually we were using. So here's the first one. It's actually not one of the queen cells we were designating, but that's a kind of emergency swarm cell. And on the other side we have one cell that's been chewed down, and then a couple of others here that have not yet been capped off. And I'm just going to go through this top box first to see what we've got. So we've got sealed brood here. Big frame of sealed brood, which will emerge in the not too distant future and really bolster whichever box that goes into. We have a queen cell at the bottom here, and several queen cells on this side. We have a queen cell on this one, tucked in the bottom here, but again, not a position that we cut out specifically for a queen cell, but that queen cell looks quite nice. More brood, and a queen cell on the bottom of this one. So we're actually seeing quite a few frames with queen cells. So what I'm going to do is lift this top box off, and we'll go down into the bottom box and see if we've got any queen cells that have been produced on the frames that we physically cut. I'm just going through, and it's mostly food stores at the moment. So we've got a queen cell on this one. So I've now been through the entire 2-story stack, and where I cut out the section for the bees to make queen cells, they've completely repaired and just built queen cells where they wanted those queen cells, which is not a problem. We can now go through again and remove those queen cells and put one in each of these boxes and leave them now to continue to develop and hopefully produce new queens. So we'll just go through this one again and see if we've got any queen cells we can use here. So here we have 2 queen cells. This one looks more elongated than this one, so I'm going to leave this queen cell and remove this one over here. And then this queen cell can be placed in one of the nuc boxes. And then we continue through to see if we have any additional queen cells that we can use. Generally the bees are very well behaved. That's going to be a curse, isn't it? Let's give them some smoke just to help them remember. And of course, when the brood emerges, it's going to emerge into one of these new boxes, and that will become its home, so it's not going to get confused about where its location is. So that's all of the queen cells out of here. We'll now go to the second brood box and just have a look to see which queen cells we're going to use from there, and we'll place those into these boxes as well. And it's important to place the queen cells first, because then we'll know exactly how many boxes we're going to use. So this particular frame has a queen cell at the bottom, so we could use that one. So we'll place that into a box. This one also has a queen cell at the bottom here, so we can use that one. And we'll just continue through finding the queen cells and placing them into the nuc boxes. Queen cell at the bottom here. So we'll use, on this frame, we'll use the queen cell at the bottom, and then on the reverse side we'll destroy all of the remaining queen cells that we've got. So that leaves us with just the one queen cell. So no queen cell on that frame, so we'll leave that one until we portion out the brood frames. Again, none on that side of the frame, so that frame is empty of all queen cells. So we have a queen cell on this frame, and again several on the reverse side. So we'll leave one queen cell and remove all of the others. And so we're at the end of this particular run, and we have 5 frames with queen cells on. So that's not a problem. We can quite easily take out the divider. So we've got 5 separate frames with queen cells on in the 3 boxes now. We could do with just one more, but it is what it is. So we can take this divider out and pop it in the side, and this box now becomes just one nuke, whereas these become 2 3-frame nukes. So we'll now apportion a frame of brood to each of these so that we're spreading the emerging brood equally between all 5 colonies. And then the final task is to add a frame of food to each of the 3-frame nukes. So we've portioned out all of the frames. We're just shaking all of the bees off the 2 empty brood boxes, and we knock the bees out of the floor as well and move that away, remembering that we need to repair that one. And all that remains is to pop the feeder and roof back on, trying to avoid crushing as many bees as possible. The feeders are not essential, but for me it's easier just to keep them with the colonies rather than moving them away. And so now what we have is 2 3-frame nucleus colonies and 1 6-frame nucleus colony. So that was really interesting. Having notched all of those frames, the bees simply repaired them. Now I'm going to put that down to a beekeeper error, probably something that I've done incorrectly in cutting down those cells. But the upshot is the bees have produced queen cells because they were queenless, and so maybe it's not absolutely necessary to notch the frames in that way. It's an on-the-spot queen rearing method where if you don't notch the frames, you still get queen cells. So it could even be easier than the on-the-spot method. So the plan now is to allow these bees to settle down. I think there'll be an uneven balance between the different nuc boxes because there seem to be more bees going in the back where the open mesh floor had dropped than in the front. So those boxes pointing to the back, to the rear of the hive, are probably going to enjoy having more of the flying bees come back to them. We won't move them until the queens have emerged and mated. So we'll wait for them to mate because I don't want to disrupt them at all. I don't want to shake the larvae away from the royal jelly or disturb the developing queens that are in those cells. And then once that's happened, probably another 2 to 3 weeks where we've got a decent laying pattern, we're then going to take these 3 boxes with the 5 hopefully mated queens in off to one of our other sites where we'll then put them into full-size hives. I think this video is going to throw up quite a lot of discussion. Hopefully, if you've got any comments, if you've used the on-the-spot queen rearing method yourself and it's worked effectively, then please do leave some comments. If you're thinking about trying it, then please don't let my inadequacies stop you from using this method. Intrinsically, the bees will produce queen cells whether you cut the comb or not, as we've demonstrated. And the bees will repair comb if you damage it. So there's really been no damage done. We're going to have a look at the queen that we removed next and just make sure that she's okay and that she's got enough room to develop in her nuc box. But she can be moved across to another apiary at any time. I hope you found that interesting. I would have taken the hood off, but we've got 1 or 2 bees that have got a little bit grumpy. So we'll catch up next time when we have a look to see whether those queens have mated, and hopefully we can follow them through into placing them at another apiary in a full-size hive.